Auzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi washabbihi ajma'in. Bismillahilladzi la yadurru ma'a ismihi syai'un fil ardi wa la fis sama'i wa samiul alim. Alhamdulillah, welcome back. We're going to discuss on chapter 2, nature and scope of wealth planning. Again, I put a summary of what has been done by another group, Muhammad Wazu Hakim, Afrizal, Irfan, and Nabil on the nature and scope of wealth planning. And this summary will give you a picture what will be the scope and nature of wealth planning. And I'm going to begin with what have been discussed earlier. That is about the wealth planning produced by one of the very famous financial advisors, that is King Financial Management. They put the scope of wealth planning to consist of financial planning, retirement planning, education planning, tax planning, estate planning, small business planning, insurance, where we are takaful there, the cash flow, and also investment management. What is missing here, of course, there is no the element of wealth purifications. We are talking about zakat, infaq, and sadaqah. Okay, we might have some similarities and some differences between the conventional and Islamic wealth planning. And some of the things we discuss in this chapter may not include all of the elements that have been established by KFM here. And there also are elements that we put in here which is not available in within the discussion of KFM. So, the thing that is missing here is about wealth purification that is very unique in Islam, because in Islam we are taught not to ourselves alone, and also we are talking about how you're going to purify your wealth, and also this purifying of wealth in form of zakat, infaq, waqaf, wa sadaqah. Beyond that is meant for you not to be greedy and for you to sacrifice your wealth for the benefit of the society. In the wealth planning, we are talking about there's differences between Islam and the Islam concept, and also for the non, or we call it as conventional concept. And Islam, as I said in the first lecture, wealth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and man is held as a trustee for the wealth. So in other words, wealth is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you are just become the trustee. Unlike the conventional, they think about wealth belong to them, and they can manage the wealth without considering what have been guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in conventional, they say that the wealth is absolute right of mankind, but in Islam it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and man is just held as a trustee. Whereby the concept of wealth planning, or the elements of wealth planning, is almost similar between the conventional sense and also for the Islamic wealth planning, except that in Islam we have what we call as wealth purification, number one, and number two, in Islam all the elements are guided by Sharia. In other words, it has to be Sharia compliance. What is lawful and unlawful in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's two elements of differences in Islamic wealth planning and conventional. Number one, there is an element of wealth purification which not exist in the conventional sense. Number two, there is an element of what we call as everything should be Sharia compliance, or what is the desirable for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is lawful and unlawful in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now we go to definition of wealth planning. It's all about how you plan to achieve your goals, your financial goals, and you have to have a comprehensive program in order to achieve this goal. So wealth planning is all about planning to achieve what is your goal with a comprehensive planning or comprehensive program that we're going to discuss later on. As far as the wealth planning is concerned, and we call as far as the wealth planning is concerned, there are three major conditions. Okay, you must be honest. There is something that is you must do it through what I call this ethical manner. should be something that is you are responsible and accountable. Number one, you're honest. Number two, you are responsible, and number three, you're halal. It must be halal and tayyiban. So these are three major conditions. So in Islam, we are talking about not only creating of wealth, but also growing of wealth. So wealth must be grow. You create the wealth through investment, through what we call this, buying buildings, buying properties, buying land, and buying shares whatsoever. You create the wealth, and also you think about the growing the wealth. It means that the wealth can grow. As I said in the first class, that is, if you put the wealth in the shares, later on the shares might give you dividend and might give you right issues, might give you bonus issue, and it will grow in terms of capital value and also in terms of the volume. And number three, there's also about preserving of wealth. So the wealth should be preserved. In other words, if you have 100,000 or 100 million, the 100 million remains and has the ability to grow, and the principal can remain. It's not going to be depleted. Number two, the critical issue is about the use of wealth during life. As we said earlier, if you consume the wealth is going to be reduced. But then if you think about how you're going to consume the wealth, at the same time the wealth going to be preserved. This is what we call as the use of wealth during the lifetime. And lastly, not the least, about how you're going to distribute of wealth at death, or what we call a wealth distribution in Islam can be in the form of can have wasiyah, hibah, waqaf, sadaqah, or at the end the wealth will be distributed based on what we call as a faraid. So the last thing, number 6, is that you have to understand the trade-off. So this discussion of wealth planning, number 6, that you have to understand the trade-off between growth and income. Are you concerning about the growth of the wealth or income? Growth means that you want them to multiply. Income is that you want in return that you can consume. For example, if you buy shares, you put the shares, and the shares is going to grow in value. You get the dividend, you reinvest the dividend, it's going to grow. But if you have bought the shares and have the dividend to consume, this is talking about income. Number 2, you must understand between risk and return. What will be risk and return? In other words, if you want to have high return, you must be able to take the risk. If I'm going to do a big business, the risk is going to be big. If I'm going to buy a very expensive stock, the risk is going to be big, but the return is going to be big. If you want to buy a less risk investment, for example, you buy government securities, the return is going to be low. You put the money in the bank, which is secured by the government, the return is going to be low. So there is a risk and return trade-off. Number 3, the trade-off between spending and security. Are you going to spend or are you not going to spend? If you're going to spend, for example, you're buying takaful, the spending will provide you security. If you don't want to spend, there's no security. Okay, this is about spending and security. And lastly, not the least, is about whether you're going to keep the wealth, control it, or you're going to transfer the wealth. It means the transfer of wealth, for example, if I have the wealth, I might use a portfolio, somebody to manage the wealth for investment. So this is what called wealth transfer, or I just control it. So this is something you have to decide whether you want to control your wealth or you're going to transfer the wealth for somebody to manage it for your future return. So that is all about how you have to think about how to achieve your objectives. You have to have the trade-off, and you have to make a decision whether you want to have it a grow or income, to have a we call low risk, low return, or high risk, high return. Are you going to spend on securities, or you're not going to spend, or are you going to manage yourself, or you control yourself, or you're going to transfer your fund to wealth advisor or through investment company or any trustee or anybody that can manage your fund. In other words, this wealth manager or wealth advisor will provide you some solution for your investment planning or wealth planning solution. Some definition about wealth planning is we're talking about how you're going to plan for your retirement planning, how you can plan for your estate planning, as well as we are talking about the balance between having money for retirement and also having money for the estate planning. The element or the aspect of wealth planning, as I said earlier, consists of many things, and some of them comprise of investment, your tax planning, your retirement planning, your estate planning, your education planning, and also consists of the other elements which I've mentioned earlier, wealth purification, about wealth distribution, and these are some of the things on the aspect of wealth planning. And this aspect of wealth planning, you want to do all these elements, investment, tax, retirement, estate, education, you can do it your own, or you can have a private banking technology. You can go to the bank and bank will do it for you. Bank will organize how for you to manage your elements of wealth planning just now. Or you can use what we call this, another private company, call it CRM, customer relationship management. That is, you can have a hire one wealth advisor. Lastly, not the least, that you can use your own wealth planning tools. That you need some what we call this knowledge and literacy on wealth management. The process involved of wealth planning, you have to have we call this inventory taking. So in other words, you must know how much your asset, where it is, what kind of asset. This is known as your inventory. For example, you have a few acres of land, you have shares, overseas shares invested in locally, you have real estate, you have a lot of properties, and all this you have to count for inventory taking, and then you analyze and you evaluate your inventories or your wealth, and then you plan and design, and then implement, and then you monitor and reviewing. The process is all about the same on any wealth planning process, like management process. It consists of a few steps have to be taken. You know your objectives, you know what is your inventory, you analyze and evaluate the option, the alternatives for your investment, and then you design, implement and monitor, and you review on your wealth planning activities. So the process consists of having the objectives, knowing your inventory, analyze the possible alternatives, evaluate all alternatives, and then you plan, design how to achieve the objective, then you implement, you monitor, and you review your action, or review your the performance of your portfolio, or the performance of your wealth design implementation just now. Okay, this is a 5-step. This is very common in any 5-step process in management textbook. You have to have the objective, allocation process, implement, monitor, and report. Okay, and then if every month, every quarterly, annually, you can again go back to the process again, look at the alternatives, look at the performance again and again and again, monthly, quarterly, and annually, and you can monitor and rebalance your investment or your wealth planning process. As a planner, wealth planning process, if you involve as a planner, then there is what I call that, they have what called as a wealth planning process from planner perspective. Number one, there is a kind of relationship between your client and you as a web planner, and the kind of services you provided and the period you explain to your customer. For example, you take the job for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or probably for 10 years, and you have this kind of relationship, and you put it in writing, what the kind of services, what will be the fees, what kind of activities are going to be done for your customer. And then number two, you ask for the client data. Ask for financial standing, goals and strategy. What kind of risks are they taking? What will be the timeline? Is this for 1 year or so? You have to have the client data. As far as a web plan is concerned, you must be honest. You must be somebody is responsible, trustworthy. There is all the client data should be kept as a private and confidential. And then you look at the client finances, about the asset, the liability, the cash flow, the investment, insurance, tax, and retirement, all these financial client finances, whether there's something that is outstanding, something that is ongoing, or something revolving, or something that is they have a surplus, they have something that is in their we call this their assets, or something that plays in their liabilities. So all these clients finances or this financial information should be available to you. And then you start to plan and put alternative. So this can be a kind of investment that agreed from you and your customer before what you have put the investment policy for your customers. You put out the strategies, the alternatives, explain thoroughly, and if the customer agreed, then you can sign investment investment policy with your customer. So the customer must be explained thoroughly, and the customer should understand what will be the financial planning and alternatives. And later on, you execute the plan, and you always liaise with other relevant parties. For example, invest in shares, you have to have engage with a broker firm. Invest in property, you have to have property agents with you, and all these relevant parties involved in your investment process. And you have to observe this financial plan and whether it achieve the target to meet the client goals, and review accordingly. And you have to have this what we call as monthly report, quarterly report, half-yearly report, so you have to review them. It's not just put the money, you have to follow the investment, and you have to provide the report to your customer. So this is some of the process and your responsibility as a web advisor to your customer, and inform what you call as Islamic wealth planning, and you have this policy agreed within you and your customer. Islamic web planning process in Islam, we go on a different discussion here, is that excess wealth gain from business investment is going to be beneficial for independence and also to the ummah. So Islam, if you are wealthy, you have all this excess wealth, is going to benefit the society, benefit to the community, benefit the ummah. So in Islam also, for this wealth generation and wealth accumulation, Islam also encourage, number two, for us to assist one another through collaboration in good works. That is, we help each other through taqwa, the element of taqwa. There is something in good words. Number three, government and public should be responsible to preserve peace and stability for ummah development. With this, it is the role of government to make sure that this ummah live in peaceful life and also a stable life for the development of the ummah. And so in other words, the government have to really control the market, control we call these all the financial sectors and investment sectors and also the property sectors. Make sure that there is going to be peace and stability. And encourage charity and sharing of goods and services to aid others in need. That is something that Islam, in the web planning, Islam very much encourage the people who are wealthy to be we call this benevolent, to be somebody who like to help other people, to like to do charity work, to be charitable, and somebody who like to donate money to aid others in need. As we have discussed earlier, there is a trade-off in Islam and also trade-off in the investment or conventional sense. We talk about risk, we talk about income, the trade-off between the client service with high return and low return, risk and return, trade-off between security and saving and security, all these trade-off. In Islam, there is another trade-off. Beyond that is the trade-off between your spiritual dimension to our worldly existence. That is what we call as a trade-off between dunya and akhirat. And talking about al-falah, this is trade-off Islam. We are talking about the success in this world and hereafter. In other words, we want Muslims to be successful in this world. At the same time, the money can benefit the society, and the wealth can benefit the ummah, so you gain success in this world and also in the hereafter. You have all these element of success in this world, the things, and also you have this element of infaq sadaqah that bring your spiritual success in this world and hereafter. As Islam also suggested that we should diversify your risk and don't put all your money in one investment. As the story of Surah Yusuf, in the story of Yusuf, it's been mentioned clearly in Al-Quran, in Surah Yusuf, the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, how they use the money for investment, for saving, and also for consumption. These are the three things have been taught in Surah Yusuf. Another thing, lastly not the least, that you shouldn't sacrifice your worldly gain at the expense of your akhirah. So think about making yourself a success more in the akhirah rather than talking about your worldly benefit. Okay, lastly not the least, as I said earlier, this is how you the web planning objective. You must understand that the web plan is all about for you to have a good return at zero risk, have a perpetual income, and you can realize your capital gain, and you have achieved your return at a reasonable risk. You have enough liquid, you can preserve for your security, and you have able to provide improve your lifestyle with a lot of choices. And you can plan. Web planning objectives that for you at the same time reduce your tax burden by a good web planning, and you also plan how to transfer asset at the right time to others, because as one of the things about web planning is that you know how to transfer asset to others. So in short, Rasulullah SAW said that a good Muslim is that who can plan himself for the hereafter. And also Muslim in the history, Rasulullah SAW planned how for the migration, for the hijrah, and how to plan the resources after the hijrah. Lastly, on the list, in Islamic web planning, main goal is to everyone to gain, plan, and distribute wealth in accordance with Allah SWT commands. You must remember that Islam is not only gaining about your wealth, at the same time you must also thinking about your wealth to be purified and wealth to gain to the ummah and the society. This is what we call as you gain your wealth and in accordance with Allah SWT commands. And that's about all for today's discussion. I hope you benefit from the discussion and how you understand the element of web planning and how this element is important for you to plan for your success in the web planning. And at the same time, you must also know what is the nature and scope of web planning, you yourself to plan for your wealth, and as also your role as to become a wealth advisor. That's why you have to have understanding of the nature and scope of web planning. Inshallah, we'll see you later on. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.